The Border Patrol, how was it being a Border Patrol in your career? Are you really extremely proud of that career?
I'm extremely proud of it. It is the best job I've ever had on that. And it's funny because people ask you, as an agent, what do you do? And you try to explain to them, and they usually kind of cock their head to the side, and their eyes are getting crossed a little bit because they're not sure what you're telling them, describing, and it's hard to describe sometimes.
Yeah.
The idea of, as a young agent in San Diego, walking the trails on No Time Out, walking that trail, following the foot sign, it's night, and everything's amplified at night, all the sounds and everything, hearing a rock roll in a distance, or paying attention to the short hair in the back of your neck saying something's not right, and getting an adrenaline rush because of that. And
absolutely.
It is the best job in the world, but it's not the job. It's not a job for everyone.
I agree. It's something I tell people as well. It's one of the best jobs I've ever had in my entire life. So something in recent news, it kind of blew up a little bit. The arrest of El Mayo and Guzman Lopez. So you've been in enough to know that was a pretty huge, significant hit in the cartel world. What are some things that you think will affect the Sinaloa Cartel from that? Or is that something that you think? My fear is just like, was there going to be repercussion or whatnot? But what are some of the things that we should expect now that that's happened?
If you would have asked that question back in like 2008, 2009, I would have told you that there would have been a lot of violence between the organization, right? That fighting, posturing, the whole bit. Since then, the dynamics for the Mexican cartels have changed quite a bit on that. So when you look at the Sinaloa Cartel, often known as one of the meanest, most violent, the whole bit. Not as much, though, as the Jalisco New Generation Cartel.
Yes, sir.
They're almost in every state, and they're ruthless, but they changed the business model, Vince.
Yeah.
It used to be narcotics, but they're almost like...
it's commodities.
Commodities, right? They're like... I know McDonald's is not going to appreciate what I'm going to say right now, but it's like McDonald's, the corporation, franchising a McDonald's store. That. And so local business, hey, I want to be a McDonald's owner, so I'm going to get a franchise McDonald's. And out of McDonald's, I get their branding. I get the commercials, I get the branding, I get some standardization. Well, that's what they've done. They got into commodities, they get in, now they're into oil, they're in avocados, they're in timeshares.
Yes.
Right? They're in all sorts of things, and they're also into extortion.
Yep.
And so what they do normally is they move into an area. The place I've been looking at a lot has been Guanajuato, one of the states in Mexico. And so there was a group called, it was a gang, the Santa Rosa gang. And the Santa Rosa gang was punching holes into the Mexican government oil pipeline, pumping, siphoning the oil, gas that comes through, and then selling it in the black market or selling it to gas stations and say, you're going to buy from us as opposed to selling. So they're making that money. And so they were doing extortion. So the New Jalisco Cartel came in and said, hey, we like your business model. Why don't you work for us under our brand? They went to the boss, and the boss said, no, we're happy. Okay, so they put a bullet in his head, and then they went to the deputy and said, hey, we're going to give you the same offer. He just saw what happened. He goes, hey, you know what? That sounds like a good offer. We will work for you on that. And so they got the branding from the Jalisco Cartel. They got the protection. They've got weapons. They got resources they needed. And so the business model's changed. And so I go back to the original question. Hey, with these arrests, what's going to happen? I don't see a lot of overt violence.
Yeah.
The business models change. It's more dealing with subcontractors. And the subcontractor goes, hey, we're still a subcontractor. Who do we report to now?
I expected there was going to be some kind of repercussions or some kind of violence immediately. And there hasn't been much. There hasn't been. So it was kind of surprising in a sense, but I think you're correct that, they've evolved into kind of a different business model.
Yeah.
Last question. The upcoming elections. How do you think that will impact the migrant influx? And let's just use both candidates right now. What would be the difference between Trump and what would be the difference between Harris?
Well, and I think that's a great question. I get that asked often. And I think you hit it on it a little bit earlier when you said, "Hey, what policy changes you'd like to see?"
Yeah.
Policy changes are great, and I had responded, "Hey, there's a lot of policies, regulations in place. Oftentimes, though, it's what we project as a nation, right? It's project in terms of preconceptions. So I go back to the last election cycle. We saw a steady decline in numbers under President Trump, right? You look at it, it's okay, he was tougher. But if you look at the resources that were given to the Border Patrol under the Trump administration, it wasn't a lot. It was a building of a physical barrier defense on that. There's some technology, but we had the stalemate in Congress, right? He wasn't getting things passed on that. But his tough language, hey, there's a consequence. There's a consequence. That had a detrimental impact on flows. Soon as the elections were over, he had lost. And when President Biden was talking about how we're going to do things, the spigot opened, and people, you saw the numbers coming up. It just increased incredibly on that. So I expect the same dynamic to occur on that. Depending who wins on this immediately, an election night, you're going to see, and I think immediately you see a rush both ways.
Yeah. There's always the thought of like, well, let me get in the country now before it might change. And so there's going to be it's the same as when Title 42 switched over, massive influx. Like they don't know. And then at the end, it's like, well, when Trump gets in, is it going to stop, slow down? And if Harris gets in, right, if Kamala Harris gets in, then is it going to pick up again? You know, I think everyone's kind of doing this almost jump rope kind of what's going to happen next.
I really do think, I think right after the elections, regardless, the number's going to go up. And I think he's exactly right. President Trump wins. Hey, I got to get in before that date, right, is one.
Yep.
If Kamala Harris wins, maybe that jump's not going to be as high.
Right.
On that, so okay, it's kind of a previous continuation of what's happened before, and that flow will come up, but the flow will be steady, right? It'll be steady. And so all I know is that history tells us when we have these large numbers come in and we don't know what to do, we always do some kind of amnesty. We do the amnesty, and how you prove amnesty or residence is usually by receipts, right? Just like, you know, you're when my grown adults or grown adult children were kids, and we would move and to new school district, we had to prove we lived in the school district. So we took utility bills, we took, mortgage payments, apartment receipts, that kind of stuff. For amnesty, you prove residence the same way. Utility bills, receipts of that kind. And so what I suspect is going to be a cottage industry selling receipts.
Oh my God. So that's a great thought. I didn't even think about that.
I saw that in 88.
Really? 88 is when Reagan had the amnesty period, correct? When he opened it up?
So it was IRC of 86, but it didn't start taking place in the phases in 88.
Correct.
Passed in 86, it was in 88. And I remember in San Isidro Boulevard, almost everyone I patted down, I go, man, what are you doing with a roll of receipts? And then they're photocopied receipts, right? I was like,
wow.
It was by someone else. It goes, hey, you got the same receipts as this guy.
Is it?
Same receipts. Someone was selling receipts. And I thought, I'm going to start saving my receipts. That's my retirement fund.